Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Brodo Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Tim. I'm with Mike, and before we get started today, we just want to remind you to please download the Fantasy Football by Brodo app. It is the only app you need to become your own expert and dominate fantasy football. It has every single stat you need for fantasy football, including in the offseason right now, where you can get the extra edge going into next season. And on top of that, you could join Patreon. Patreon.com/BrodoFantasy is where you could support the show. And you're about to hear the update. We're going to scale back the pods a little bit right now because it is the off season. But we were always available for our patrons on our Discord, one of the many perks you get over at Patreon. Plus, you get to support the show. So please do so. Remember, download the app, support the show. And if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe. Today, we are looking at the NFL draft. We are 1 week removed. So we've digested. We've sat down, we've taken our 1,000 steps, and we're ready to turn it into energy. You know what I'm saying?
Fun draft.
Yeah, it was. And we're going to get into it, our winners and losers, right after we begin. Let's do it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Brodo Fantasy Football Podcast presented by BrodoFantasy.com and the Fantasy Football by Brodo app, the only tool you need to dominate fantasy football. Oh, we are post-draft, baby. We are post-draft. Michael, how are you feeling after that? Like you said, that pretty fun draft to watch.
Yeah, a lot of trades. There's a lot of, a lot of question marks throughout the entire draft. You don't know who was going to go where. I mean, Will Levis had steam to be the #1 overall pick the day before the draft because of some Reddit guy. Like, it was about as wide open as it's been in recent memory. Even the #1 overall pick, like, it was expected to be Bryce Young, but like, if it wasn't Bryce Young, I don't think it would have been like the most shocking #1 overall pick change ever. Kind of like when Sam Darnold was supposed to be the #1 overall pick and then ended up being Baker Mayfield type of action. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun draft. A lot of I think they broke the NFL record for most trades in an NFL draft, actually, which gotta love that. So yeah, it was a fun time. Some teams had a good draft, some teams more questionable, some picks were shocking. We're gonna be talking about some of it.
Before we get started today, I want to talk about. I have a little rant, but before I get into my rant, I want to say this. Number one, like I said in the opening, we're going to be scaling back a little bit for the offseason. We're still going to be coming to you every week, but the 2 episodes that you become accustomed to every week are not going to be the case. It's going to be a 1 episode a week situation. Every other week, me and Michael will be on the mic, and every other week, the Dynasty Don, Matt Ward, which if you have not listened to yet, go check out his recap of the draft. He has 2 very good guests on that know their stuff when it comes to Dynasty. They talk like a different language to Dynasty. That's how they know. That's how you know they've been in it for a long time. Like when you speak the language, that's how you know. Like when you live in a place, if you speak the language and it's not your language, you're a resident. So he's a resident in fantasy in Dynasty. So he's going to be on there, and then me and Michael will be on there. And that'll probably lead us up to, when everything heats up and that heat wave, coming, baby. We love that heat wave, 32 teams in 32 days. I'm saying that's way too early.
Way too early, kid. Way too
I also got to
early.
put this on vibrate. What am I doing over here? This is amateur hour.
A nice little chime. Classic.
Yeah,
Classic
a little news update. All right, so I got 2 rants. Okay, I got 2 rants. The first one I have written down. I planned it. The second one, I can't remember exactly what it was. I wanted to rant based on what Michael was saying, so hopefully I remember it. But I'm going to give you the first rant. All right. So one of the most surprising things about the draft was that Anthony Richardson went 4th overall. Now, surprising to some didn't say it. And I keep hearing the same comp. And, I get it because their throwing motions look alike. But I keep hearing the same comp of Jalen Hurts to Anthony Richardson. These guys are just like a 1-for-1, and you could take one out and replace one out with the other one. Like, Shane Steichen worked with Jalen Hurts. This is perfect for Anthony Richardson. Like, I got to say, the only things that these 2 guys have in common is that they're super freak athletes. That's literally the only thing these 2 guys have in common. When you're talking about Jalen Hurts' college career, you're talking about a guy who went to 2 national championships, who almost won, who almost got his team coming back from a ridiculous deficit on 2 different college teams, put up #1 offenses on 2 different college teams, started for 2.5 years in college, against Anthony Richardson, who has 12 starts and never really dominated a game like that ever in his life. Like, to call Jalen Hurts Anthony Richardson is just disrespectful. That's like saying, like,
Yeah.
It's like saying, Tyreek Evans is Michael Jordan just because they're both 6'6" and super athletic. Like, no, Tyreek Evans is not Michael Jordan.
People like to get crazy with the comps when it comes to the athletic ability.
Bro, everyone's just saying that nowadays. Like, oh, he's the next Jalen Hurts. Like, these guys have nothing in common. Like, Jalen Hurts is a next level human being. Like, this guy is a Terminator.
That comp hurts. Get it?
That just ruined everything.
Get it?
Maybe my second rant is about how, Michael just needs to shut up. Yeah, I can't remember what the second rant was about, but I'm going to re-listen to this on my commute tomorrow morning, and I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, fuck. I swear.
You'll probably remember. It's probably about something we'll be discussing later, I assume. I don't know. I don't know what you were planning on talking about.
No, I wasn't planning on it, but then it just slipped my mind. What can you do? All right. You know what didn't slip my mind? The things that we actually prepared for. The 3 winners. We have 3 winners and 3 losers. Now, we're not going to do it like other people where it's just like, here's a winning team or here's a winning guy. No, we're getting abstract with it. We're trying to kill 8 birds with 1 stone.
Well, I mean, we did choose teams and players as well.
Yes, I mean, but not only. Not only. I have 1 player and 1 team. But that's it. All right. Michael, why don't you start us off, because I am the host and I say so. All right. So your first winner, and I like this one. This one was almost a winner for me. The Arizona Cardinals.
The
Cardinals are your first winner.
You know what? I'm taking a page out of your playbook here, Tim. I'm not saying it's the Cardinals, the team. I'm saying it's their trade with the Texans. So Arizona Cardinals trade is one of the big winners for me here, which in turn makes the Cardinals a winner, because that trade with the Texans is about as perfect as a trade as you can make if you're an NFL team not looking to draft a quarterback. The Arizona Cardinals were supposed to pick at number 3, and they traded the number 3 pick to move back to number 12 overall. They were also gifted the number 3 overall pick. The number 33 overall pick and a 2024 first-round pick. Guys, the Miami Dolphins didn't even pick this year in the first round. So 31 teams picked in the first round. The 33rd overall pick is basically a first-round pick, and they get the Houston Texans 2024 first-round pick next year. The Houston Texans, the honorable mention as one of the big draft losers, decided they needed Will Anderson so much, a defensive end who, yes, he's supremely talented, but they needed a defensive end so much on a team that's expected to finish bottom 3 again, who is nowhere near ready to win and be a competitive football team yet. Dude, what? And now they're giving away their next year's first-round pick for Will Anderson. Like, we saw Myles Garrett, like, he was a huge thing. Jadeveon Clowney, he was a huge thing. Like, did these players automatically make the teams that they joined?
Myles Garrett is a different kind of subject because he did.
But did they? No, he didn't.
I mean,
whatever.
Yes, he's the dominant force in the NFL.
Whatever, Tim. I'm just saying.
Jadeveon Clowney's more.
You're saying their rookie seasons, they made this huge impact where they should have traded a future first-round pick for it? It's not like they have weapons on the damn team.
Yeah.
Just absolutely abysmal trade for Houston. Great trade for Arizona. Basically they were able to move back, and then, of course, they traded up back to number 6 to get Paris Johnson. It was Paris Johnson, I believe, actually. Yeah. And, they got the guy they wanted initially, and they were able to get the 33rd pick and next year's first-round pick out of it from Houston. Like, now if they're right in the hunt for the Caleb Williams lottery going on. Everybody's going to want to be drafting Caleb Williams. Who knows what the Cardinals are going to be looking like with Kyler Murray next season, or if they want to trade back again for an even bigger treasure, or draft someone like Marvin Harrison Jr. if they want a pass-catching weapon. But they're right back in the middle of things now. That was a tremendous trade. Awful, awful trade by Houston. The Texans just continue to be one of the worst franchises ever.
And, you're a little bit of a contrarian take on that one. I want you to know. A lot of people like that trade.
Yeah,
because
ridiculous.
Of Will Anderson. I'm on your side. In fact, like, I remember what my rant was going to be about now, because you reminded me. It's a perfect timing.
Oh yeah.
What the hell is up with the value of a draft pick? Like, yo, we had a draft just now where people were throwing around second, third, fourth round picks like they were just nothing. They're just like tossing papers into the air. There's so many. But in the regular season, you can't get a veteran. Like, people are like, oh, a third round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. Oh, no way. I can't do that. No. A fourth round pick, DeAndre Swift, fourth round pick. You're lucky you got a fourth. Bro, you're trading these. You're trading next year's first round pick for a guy that never played in the NFL before. What is that? How does that make sense?
It's a rookie contract and all, but yeah, still
rookie contract for a second number 2 overall pick.
Yeah,
it's a large contract. I don't know, man. It's just like I can't figure it out because if third round picks are going to be super valuable, then let them be. But no, these teams just like throw these picks around after protecting them with their lives. For what? So you can get another guy who's never played before that you're most likely going to get wrong because that's how the cookie crumbles.
You get rookie fever, man. Classic.
Doesn't make any sense. If I was a GM and I was a first-time GM, I'd be like, all right, I'd scan the league for whatever superstars are affordable, and I just trade all my draft picks for 7 superstars. And then completely turn around my franchise. Imagine what you can get for a first-round pick in the regular season. Imagine what you can get for that.
Oh, a shitload.
Yeah. Yes.
But also,
but then they trade it. They trade 2 first-round picks for a guy who never played before.
And I forgot to mention a 2024 third-round pick as well. Just ridiculous.
I mean, I just don't get the value of these draft picks. I don't get it. Okay, someone explain it to me like I'm 8. Another thing that I can't – I'm going to transition now, Michael. You good with that? Are you done? I got into a rant and I don't know if all right, you're done. So another thing that I don't understand, and Michael's going to definitely disagree with me on this one, but that's okay.
Oh boy, here we go.
The big winners of this draft were my boys. That's my boys. That's my boys.
Let's go. That's my boy. That's my boy.
The running backs, man. Again, more people saying running backs don't matter. Well, I'm here to tell you that they do matter, and they matter now more than ever. Because now you need an NFL with 40 good running backs in it. The way that offenses work. Before, you only needed about 20 good running backs because you would hand them the ball 300 times a year. Now you have to 400 times a year. Now you have to spread out the love, so you need 40 good running backs in the league. That makes them even more valuable. And two running backs in the top 12 picks this year. 7 running backs in the top 3 rounds. And on top of that, people are like, "Oh, but they have a small window for their career. They have a small window for their career." Well, guess what? There's been no more of a successful strategy in the last few years, particularly since 2015, than drafting a running back within the first 20 picks. Let's call it 24 picks, right? This one I got to give credit to Fantasy Football 101 on Instagram. Since 2012, listen to the running backs and their rookie finishes being drafted in the top 24, which is the top 2/3 roughly of the draft. Top 3/4. Trent Richardson was a running back 7 in his rookie year. Didn't work out well with him, but his rookie year, very good. Todd Gurley, RB9, Hall of Famer. Melvin Gordon was the only bust, RB48. He ends up being an insane fantasy asset for years. Ezekiel Elliott, running back 2. Leonard Fournette, running back 9. Christian McCaffrey, running back 10. Saquon Barkley, running back 1. Josh Jacobs, running back 21. Najee Harris, running back 3. And now you have these two guys, Jamar Gibbs and Bijan Robinson coming in. And they're going to I already know I'm so on the Bijan Robinson train this year. I don't think RB1 overall is out of the question at all for Bijan Robinson.
Well, Tim, the issue isn't the running backs not drafting them early in the NFL draft is a NFL standpoint, not a fantasy football standpoint, really. Like they're being drafted that high because they're good, but it doesn't make it worth the pick.
Listen, you take your nerdiness for your later thing, all right? You and your nerdness, get out of here. All right. I want to
You
put
piss me off, man.
my draft capital in the guy who touches the ball 17 to 25 times
Yeah,
a
you're
game.
the old school
No, I'm
idiot
not.
GM.
No, I'm not. I'm the guy who sees who wins. All right. If you don't have
Yeah,
Patrick
the
Mahomes,
Chiefs, the Bills,
if you don't have
the
Patrick Mahomes,
Eagles,
if you
with
don't have
Boston Scott getting
what do
half
you
their
mean? What do you
touches.
mean the Eagles? The Eagles had great running backs, including a second
Yeah,
round
Boston
draft
Scott is
pick.
so good.
Stop it. You're saying Boston Scott as if Miles Sanders isn't the starter there.
Boston
Wasn't the
Scott played
starter.
like 30% of the snaps.
So what?
So did Kenny
He was the
Gainwell.
pass
I'm just
catching.
saying, like,
No,
you
because he was
don't.
the pass catching back and they
And
were
Miles Sanders
trailing.
did nothing during the playoffs.
Stop it. You're talking yourself in circles. Doesn't matter. They still had a good running back and got to where they were.
You're a silly boy.
No, you're the silly boy. Seriously, though, like, if you don't have Patrick Mahomes on your team or Josh Allen, you need a running back to succeed. There's no that's just what it is. And in terms of fantasy, running backs who won as well. Guys who kind of were on the hot seat where if a rookie came in, then you don't really know what's going on. My biggest winner, Miles Sanders. I love Miles Sanders this year. He's finally getting the role that he wants, and I think that he can handle. And he has a rookie quarterback or Andy Dalton starting week 1, a young pass-catching group. He's going to have the opportunity to touch the ball a lot in his backfield. This is not the Miles Sanders that you got in Philadelphia. And your home leagues and everyone is going to be drafting Miles Sanders as if he's Miles Sanders last year, and it's going to be a mistake. Another big winner, Damian Harris, now with Buffalo. James Conner with the Cardinals. Joe Mixon. We didn't know what was happening with Joe Mixon's future. No running back added for the Bengals. Looks like Joe Mixon's on the way back. Nick Chubb. No, they didn't add anything to that running back room, and Kareem Hunt's gone. Tony Pollard. They added a scat back. Tony Pollard is the guy there. Damian Pierce, another winner. Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon re-signed. Cam Akers. The Rams didn't make any moves at running back. Ramondre Stevenson. Damian Harris gone and no moves made by the Patriots. DeAndre Swift gets traded into that Miles Sanders role, and I think he can succeed there. If you were a DeAndre Swift manager in Dynasty, he goes from being in the doghouse of a coaching staff and being one of 3 guys to now being, I think, what you can
one
clearly
of 3
assume,
guys.
Yeah, but I think clearly you could assume that he's the main guy in that package. Like, unless they use Penny as the bruiser, I don't see that happening. I see DeAndre Swift. His talent is just superior to the rest of those guys.
See, I don't know. The DeAndre Swift hive has always been overly optimistic about DeAndre Swift. He's never been, in any aspect, really, a successful rushing running back in the league. It's been his pass catching that everyone gets hyped about. So I would not be surprised at all if Rashad Penny's the main early down back for, at least if he's healthy in the beginning of the season.
That's fine. Give me a DeAndre Swift that catches 7 balls for 83 yards and a touchdown. I'll take it every time.
If that's just expected. 7 for 83 and a touchdown.
I'm just saying. What I'm saying is, give me the pass catching back who has that ceiling. What do you think? What? That's not a DeAndre Swift line that's realistic.
Show me how many running backs last year had a 7 for 83 line out of the
get out of here with your shit. All right, and then also I got 2 more guys.
Like 4 for 29 is more realistic.
I got 2 more guys. Najee Harris. No one else in that backfield. It's his all again. And I think a big winner for me, a guy that I have some shares of in Dynasty, so I'm very happy about this, Rachaad White. Rachaad White survived. It looks like he's going to be the starting running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So running backs in general,
maybe Kareem Hunt ends up in Tampa 12.
Bay. I don't think Kareem Hunt looked washed last year. He looked like bad. It was over. All right. That's it for me. That's my rant about running backs. My weekly rant on running backs is over.
And I never get
one of the most important positions in the NFL and the most important position in fantasy. Tell your kids, tell your wife. All right, Michael. You're next.
You anger me.
Do you want to do
next
the loss?
For me.
We can just do this. Like, you want to just go off that and do your first loss? Or are you going to?
Yeah, I'll do my first loss. Why not? Right. We could go one loss. So my loss is the analytics crowd gets the L here because of how the NFL drafted. But this does not mean the analytics crowd is wrong. It just means they take an L. Sometimes teams take L's. The Knicks lost to Miami Heat game 1. They took an L, but then they won in game 2. Sometimes you just got to take an L to get a W the next time out. And the analytics crowd, who didn't want teams, or was saying teams shouldn't be drafting running backs in the first round. The over/under in Vegas for running backs drafted in the first round was like 1.5 or something. Obviously, nobody thought. People thought Bijan Robinson might fall the back half of the first round. Jahmyr Gibbs for sure, at least in the back half of the first round. There was like some idea that he'd go in the first round, but not number 12 like he did to the Detroit Lions. So the analytics crowd gets the loss here because the NFL said, I don't give a shit what your analytics say. We're drafting how we want to draft. The tight ends going early, the safeties, all these low positional value type picks and positions. The NFL didn't care, and they drafted as if it didn't matter. So the analytics crowd takes the L on that. However, I still think it was a mistake by several teams drafting the way they did. I'm going to get into the Atlanta Falcons a little later on, sneak peek, but like it was just wild to me to see some of the picks that were made for teams that like the Atlanta Falcons are in no position to, I'll talk about the Falcons later, but like I'll talk about the Lions, for instance, because you were talking about DeAndre Swift as well. Traded to number 12 pick and selected Jahmyr Gibbs, despite the fact that he just gave David Montgomery a nice big deal, and the fact that they had DeAndre Swift on a contract, who was then obviously traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. But I don't know, man. I just don't understand how a team like the Lions, who look like they're ready to be a very, very good team, had a great second half last season, could have bolstered their defense, could have bolstered their offensive line, could have got a pass catcher now that Jameson Williams is out for 6 games, with the gambling thing going on, or 4 games, I believe it is. And instead they take Jahmyr Gibbs to just be another running back on their team. And yeah, they took then Sam Laporta later, a tight end. As we know, Detroit has not had success with tight ends in recent memory for the most part, drafting them super early. And it's very odd, but that's the way the cookie crumbled.
For me, I disagree with you.
Yeah, of course you do.
I mean, here's the thing. Could they have gotten a little better value on their draft picks? Probably, because of the value. I do understand that running back and interior linebacker are two, these are two positions of.
Right. The Lions also took that middle linebacker who's like an off-ball linebacker.
These are positions that used to be, when I was growing up, like in 2004, very, very high value. And they used to get picked very high all the time. Linebackers and running backs were.
It was a different game.
Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like the fact that the game has moved away kind of devalues them the same way that a center is devalued in the NBA now. Like, yes, like a center, you don't need a center to really be good. But at the same time, who just were the two people that were at the MVPs, Jokic and Embiid. You see how much of a difference Mitchell Robinson has made in the playoffs for the Knicks. Like, these are guys like these positions have been lost, but people forget how really important a linchpin position this is, and that you need it. And the Detroit Lions made some great moves in free agency. They got some high talent free agents, high price free agents in some key spots. I was sad that they didn't address wide receiver. I would have loved to see them address a little wide receiver, especially now that Jameson Williams is going to be suspended for the first 6 games.
4 games.
4 games, excuse me. I would have liked to see them add a little more, especially after losing DJ Chark. But I think that it was a good one. All right, so I get the first losses. I got my first loss, right?
Yep.
All right, so my first loss are big wide receivers. Now, what do I mean about this? This is a theory that I've floated on this show before.
Here we go.
Here's a theory. No, I think you're going to like this one. The NFL is changing dramatically. The new rules have completely shifted the game, and with it has shifted the wide receiver position. Like, the wide receiver position was a position that everyone thought was like, oh, you can put together whatever wide receivers, don't pay big money to wide receivers. Now, wide receiver is one of the most sought after and important positions in the draft. And I think that's because of the rules, the safety, and how it's changing the bodies of these wide receivers to the point where Guys who used to be just specialty guys are now guys that can dominate the league. All right, let me get into the numbers of exactly what I mean on that. Only one wide receiver this year was drafted in the first round that was over 6 feet and 200 pounds. That's Quinton Johnson, right? Now, before 2020, 2004, which I mentioned already, 2004 had the most first-round wide receivers drafted ever, 6. Guess how many of those players were over 6 foot, 200 pounds, Michael, out of the 6?
All of them.
All of them. Every single person. And I know 2004 was a long ass time ago. So let's go a little bit more current. Between 2014 and 2019, there were 20 first round wide receivers. Only 6 of those receivers were below the criteria of 6 foot, 200 pounds. Over the last 3 seasons since 2020, when really shifted the Justin Jefferson draft, there have been 18 first-round wide receivers. And just think about this. In between 2014 and 2019, 20 first-round wide receivers. Last 3 seasons, 18 first-round wide receivers. So it also shows you how much this position is being drafted more, right? 13 of them, 13 out of the 18 were under 6 foot and 200 pounds. And the ones that were above were like just above. Besides really like Drake London, there's really no other guy because it's like Jamar Chase was one of the guys that was just above. CeeDee Lamb was one of the guys who he's 6'2", but he's under 200. Justin Jefferson is 6'1", 202. So these are the guys that you're talking about that don't fit the criteria, and these guys prove my point even more. The whole league has changed because now these guys are not just burners that go down the sideline and are like Santana Moss and Brandon. This is not Brandon Cooks anymore. This is guys like Justin Jefferson who could be every single thing that your team needs. A guy like Jamar Chase who can absolutely dominate. CeeDee Lamb, domination. The league is changing right before our eyes. And little wide receivers are the trend. And they were the trend in the first round this year. And I think that's going to continue. So my big losers for this one, put a nail in the coffin for big wide receivers being the bee's knees going forward for me.
Interesting finds, Tim. I like it.
Yeah, I did a little analytics myself today. All right, Michael.
I wouldn't say it's analytics, more just like just looking at
why just let me speak, bro?
Because shut up.
All right, Michael, who is your second winner?
Going back to the winners, yeah. My winner here is a little comeback player of the year action in Geno Smith. Shout out to the Seattle Seahawks continuing to bolster that offense. They had 6 picks in the top 4 rounds this year, 2 in round 1, 2 in round 2, and 2 in round 4. In round 1, they took Devon Witherspoon, 5th overall, and then they went Jackson Smith-Njigba, 20th overall, first wide receiver drafted, set off a chain of wide receivers to follow. In round 2, they took Derek Hall, a defensive end from Auburn, and then they took Zach Charbonnet from UCLA to bolster their running back room. And then in the 4th round, Anthony Bradford, O-lineman, LSU, offensive line help right there for Geno Smith. So of their first 5 picks, Geno Smith got a big pass catching weapon in Jackson Smith-Njigba, who profiles mainly as a slot guy. He could move around. He could be, the guy who takes over for Tyler Lockett once Tyler Lockett ends his time in Seattle. Obviously, he's a different player than like DK Metcalf is, but until then, he could slot right into the slot there. My favorite wide receiver coming out this year. A lot of people's wide receiver 1 overall this year, and apparently the Seattle Seahawks thought so as well. And they took another running back as well to bolster that. It's again a questionable pick, taking Zach Charbonnet when you have Ken Walker already there, but bolstering their running back room, and then Anthony Bradford to bolster their offensive line group. They took a center later on as well in round 5 for Michigan. And they're clearly looking to make an impact this season. They're not like trying to rebuild or anything. The Geno Smith is their guy, and they went out there and they drafted as if Geno Smith is going to be a game-changing type quarterback, and they got him more weapons. So shout out to the Seahawks and Geno Smith, who was one of the best stories in the league last year. Let's see if he could repeat now.
Love it. I love it. I think
Deserve it.
the Seahawks, man, they are impressive. You gotta love Pete Carroll. You gotta love that he kind of like won that whole back and forth with Russell Wilson. They rebuilt after one of the
Yep.
worst trades of all time for Jamal Adams. Thank you again for that, Seattle. We appreciate it. And so it respectable. And I'm gonna rebound off you here, Michael. And I'm gonna go with my second loser of the draft, and that is Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, I know what you're thinking, Tim. What are you talking about? Yeah, I don't think that he's the loser in general because I still think he was the best wide receiver in the draft. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, I didn't get a lot of time to talk about the rookies, but the fact that he was the number one receiver when he was on the field at the same time as Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and Jameson Williams was in that wide receiver room for a little bit as well. Let's not forget that. The fact that he was the number one receiver with those three guys in the room at the same time, two guys on the field at the same time, that tells me something. The same way that we knew Jamar Chase was going to be incredible because he was the best player on the field when Justin Jefferson was opposite of him, it's the same logic. And some of these logics are just unflappable, in my opinion. I think this is one of them.
Some of these logics.
And so that's why it really disappoints me that he didn't land in a spot where he could really take over and be the number one guy. And I know that he's not a number one receiver in the sense of he lines up in the outside, but that doesn't mean he can't be a number one guy. Check out, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cooper Kupp. You know what I mean? These guys are number one guys, even though they play in the slot. I think if he would have made it to the right team, he would have had the opportunity to do that. But, dude, no matter how good he is, DK Metcalf is going to get his. Tyler Lockett is going to get his. He's a Geno Smith favorite. And people sleeping on Tyler Lockett, like at this point, can you stop already? And you know that Pete Carroll loves to run the football. And he got Ken Walker, and he just drafted a running back in the second round. Michael talked about the improvements to the running game that happened. I'm just so disappointed that Jackson Smith and Jigba was going to be the number 4 option on the team this year. Now, was it great for Seattle? Yes. Am I out on Jackson Smith and Jigba dynasty long-term? No. I still think he's a great player. In fact, Tyler Lockett's a free agent next year, I believe. So that should be a better situation for him coming up shortly. But for this year, unless there's a DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett or Ken Walker injury, I just don't see a world where Jackson Smith and Jigba is a consistent fantasy contributor. I think he could contribute every once in a while in a good matchup, but I don't see a world where he is consistently putting up wide receiver 2 or better numbers for you in your lineup, and that is disappointing because I thought that he could if he went somewhere like Baltimore or if he went somewhere else that needs a wide receiver really bad.
Yeah, I don't like the Jigba as an L here. I know he's heading to Seattle where they have Metcalf and Lockett, but I guess we could just hop into my second loser as well here, since it's relatable. Mr. Ken Walker of the Seattle Seahawks, because I don't think JSN is going to be the 4th option per se. I think look, Pete Carroll's been passing more and more year over year. Last year was his highest pass percentage over the last 5 years with Seattle. I wouldn't be surprised if that goes up again this year. Now that they drafted Jackson Smith-Njigba, they didn't really use the tight end much last season, so they could use help out in the slot and getting they didn't use the slot much either last season. So this really opens up the field for them if they want to get that part of the field more involved. And Ken Walker is a loser for me because they drafted JSN, which means they're likely going to be passing at least the same clip as they did last year, which was pretty high. And then they drafted Zach Charbonnet in round 2, who profiles as more of a pass catcher than Ken Walker does, which means Ken Walker would be stuck instead of a workhorse role, Ken Walker, which we saw at the end of the year last year, and more of an early down type of role, Ken Walker, which, again, in fantasy leagues with PPR becoming more and more popular, half PPR, of course, pass catching is very, very important. And if Ken Walker becomes more of just a early down back, that means he's gonna be a touchdown dependent guy. And unless you're Jamal Williams scoring 18 touchdowns like Barry Sanders, that means you're gonna have a lot of up and down weeks. Someone like Miles Sanders last year, we saw he had a very solid season overall, but man, oh man, was it frustrating starting him week over week, because if he found the end zone, you were gonna be very happy, but if he didn't, you were going to be very upset. And that may be the case now with Ken Walker, who I would have considered in the top 25 overall players before this trade if they didn't add to that running back room. Now he's someone I'm not nearly as interested in, and I think his stock is going to fall quite a bit as long as Zach Charbonnet stays healthy.
I will say one thing. This doesn't really have to do directly with your take, because I do agree, Ken Walker. If you have him today, you are feeling less good about him than you did 2 weeks ago. But I will say this. This is a coach in Pete Carroll that drafted Rashad Penny when Chris Carson was doing his thing, and the year started and it was the Chris Carson show and Penny was on the bench.
Yeah.
So I don't think that you can assume roles right now for running.
But
I
think it's just a little bit like Rashad Penny wasn't drafted as a pass catcher. Charbonnet profiles is more of a pass catcher type of guy. Like he can be the third down back there, which is not ideal.
All right,
Walker.
I'm gonna get into my last winner. My last winner is the day 2 and 3 wide receivers and tight ends.
Big bunch, kid. Big bunch.
Well, I'm not going to say all of them because that would be ridiculous. But I will say this. There are a few of them. I didn't count the totals right now, but I'm going to do it real quick. There are 8 wide receivers and 4 tight ends that were drafted on either day 2 or day 3 that have a legitimate shot at being starting players on their teams next year. And for some of them, they have legitimate shots of being very involved, like maybe the number 1 option, which is insane. Let's go over them. Let's start at tight end, the day 2 tight ends. Michael Mayer, Las Vegas. Obviously, they got rid of Darren Waller, right? So there is a spot there to be had. Then you got the 2 tight ends that were drafted for Green Bay, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Both of them have a shot at being the starting tight end, maybe both of them being the starting tight end. If you're looking at day 2 wide receivers now, Jonathan Mingo in Carolina, a very T. Higginsy type pick here. A lot of people like Jonathan Mingo, and he can go in and slot as the number 1 wide receiver right now if he wins that job. Wide receiver Jaden Reed in Green Bay. Yes, Christian Watson did phenomenal and Romeo Doubs showed potential, but I mean, if he outplays Doubs, it's not like they're married to Doubs. He could start. Rashee Rice, Kansas City right now, their starting wide receivers are Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, and
Sky Moore.
This is not something that's going to blow you away. This is more circumstantial. Marvin Mims for Denver. It's said that Denver's not in love with Courtland Sutton. They're trying to move him, right? I know Tim Patrick is still there. Jerry Jeudy's still there. So but if they move Courtland Sutton, then all of a sudden Marvin Mims seems a little sexier. Now you go down to day 3. Day 3 wide receivers. Tank Dell with Houston. Apparently, according to Sleeper today, CJ Stroud, after he got drafted, said, I only have one recommendation. Please draft Tank Dell. Which, Michael, you already shit on Houston. If the guy you just drafted number 2 overall tells you who to draft and you draft him, that's the biggest L of the entire draft. I just want to
okay, Mr. Stroud, we'll do whatever you want.
All right, the good way to make sure you have a spoiled brat at quarterback right away. Jalen Hyatt, a guy that you were going to talk about, Michael, a guy that won the Biletnikoff Award. He goes to the Giants.
Jalen Hyatt was a day 2 wide receiver, no?
Day 3. He was a 3rd-round pick, right? So
I keep forgetting that day 2 is.
So that is so day 2. It used to be day 2 was round 2 and 3, but then they extended round 2, and now round 3 is in day 3, right? So technically, you know what it is. Round 3, he has a chance to step in and be the number 1 receiver for the Giants if he does that. Wide receiver Josh Downs in Indianapolis, he has to beat out Alec Pierce for a job. You expect that to be possible. And wide receiver Michael Wilson of Arizona, particularly if D-Hop is traded, then you have Marquise Brown on one side, and Michael Wilson has a chance to have a starting role, and he was drafted in the 3rd round. So these are guys that were drafted in rounds that you don't usually, predict starters right away. and they have an opportunity because of the roles they got drafted to be starters. So I think big winners of this draft were, it seemed as though the teams that didn't fill these needs in the first round were willing to, go and fill those needs in later rounds. So the later rounds were very abundant for the wide receivers and the tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys are going to miss. That's just the nature of it. They're not going to be great in the NFL. A lot of them will be fairly solid, but it was nice to see teams with needs actually go after players that might be able to operate in that offense right away. Like Jalen Hyatt was going to be one of my winners, but Tim decided to go with day 2, 3 wide receivers and tight ends, so I couldn't choose Jalen Hyatt. Going to the Brian Dable offense, that's completely wide open. The wide receiver room, 5 touchdown game against Alabama, as everyone knows, like caught a lot of steam. What with the NFL draft prior the last couple months. So yeah, I agree with you, Tim. I agree with you.
I should also say I forgot one person around a day 2 pick, tight end Luke Schoonmaker, who was signed by former Michigan, now Cowboy. Right, that there's a whole tight.
How about them Cowboys?
And he's 24, so on the older side. There are a bunch of old. Like one of my winners was almost old guys in this draft. There's a lot of older prospects.
There are
in this draft. 24 is an older prospect. So he was born in 1998. Man,
that's so weird.
That makes me feel old. But yeah. So anyway, he's an older prospect. I'm 24 years old. Older prospect. Yeah. These kids these days. All right, Michael. Who is your? That wasn't my last winner. I have a whole other winner. Who is your
final winner?
Your final winner?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Who's your final winner?
Winner is Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. The Bills had 6 picks in the draft this year. 2 of them were in the 7th round. One of them was in the 5th round. So not great draft capital there for the Bills, but they started off with Dalton Kincaid at number 25 overall, who's supposed to be a pass catching weapon right away for Josh Allen. Sean McDermott came out right away and said that they're excited about Kincaid because they're able to get him on the field and they're able to run 2 tight end sets now and have like a pass catching weapon out there as well during that time. So it opens up the playbook a little bit more because as we know, the Bills, their offense could get stagnant at times. There's only so much you could rely on Josh Allen to make big plays, especially when guys like Gabe Davis aren't like really doing too much. Like besides Stephon Diggs in that offense last year, they were very much in need of weapons, and Dalton Kincaid going there could be a nice help right away. And then with their second pick, they took Osiris Torrance of the Florida Gators, an offensive lineman. So trying to bolster their offensive line as well, which of course always helps out the quarterback. After that, they took a linebacker, and then they took wide receiver Justin Shorter out of Florida, who doesn't have great numbers, but he's a ginormous human and very athletic. So clearly they're trying to help out Josh Allen here, and just using your first 2 picks, your only 2 like top 6 picks. Like pick 3 was pick 91. Like they had 2 picks in the entire draft. They're like really meaningful picks, and they went tight end and all linemen. So clearly they're trying to get even more help for Josh Allen there. So shout out to Josh Allen and the Bills. Let's see if they're able to finally do something this season besides just lose right when they make it into the playoffs.
I hope not, as a Jets fan, but I hope so as a fan of the NFL.
The Jets will beat them in the playoffs for sure.
My last loser. Tennessee. The Tennessee Titans. Now, they're a loser for many reasons. Mostly because they're just bleh. They're just a bleh team. They've been bleh. Even when they're good, they're bleh. And they're a team that's completely in flux right now. Like, is this team going to win a Super Bowl or even compete in a division with an improved Jaguars team? Maybe, because the other 2 teams are so trash. But are they going to really make noise in the playoffs, or are they just middling? And this draft did nothing to make them any less middling. What do? One of the bright spots of your team is quarterback, right? Ryan Tannehill is a good quarterback. So you don't move Ryan Tannehill. He's going to still be your starter. You trade up and take the guy who fell 2 years in a row now. Malik Willis, they traded up for him last year after he fell, after all the hype. Will Levis, they traded up for him this year after he fell after all the hype. It's like it's like bargain. They're like bargain shoppers in the draft.
I don't have issue with trying to hit a home run on the quarterback position though. Because if
When
you
you
do hit, like if Will Levis works
if that,
out, this is going to be an atrocious take.
sure, but if that's the case, then why not just move Ryan Tannehill and go with Will Levis? Because
you
the
want
way
him to
that
learn.
well, it's not even that, because the way your roster is built, like, what is he going to learn? He's going to learn how to lose his best player next year and not have any weapons. Because Derrick Henry, for some strange reason, is still on this team. Ryan Tannehill, for whatever reason, is still on this team. I would love to see Ryan Tannehill in an Atlanta Falcons jersey. And the real thing that happened is you didn't add any weapons to this team. The wide receiver room right now is looking Treylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Kyle Phillips, Chris Moore. Like, what are you doing with that group? Even if Treylon Burks,
they need help.
Yeah, and they didn't do anything to make that happen.
Yeah,
They didn't do anything They didn't do anything. Yes, they got a left guard, so their lineup is probably going to be a lot better. But the rest of the team is just like this wish-wash of blandness. And eventually you have to make a decision, like, what are you going to be? You were 7-10 last year. You haven't improved the roster enough to the point where you're supposed to compete this year out of nowhere? Because why? Because you added a backup quarterback and a guard? Like, when all the wide receiver options were available when you drafted. All of them. Like, what are you doing? You're either going to sell out and start building, or you're going to compete and you got to put an offense together. This team is just like, it doesn't know what to ask from its elbow. Like, it doesn't know where it's going, if it's going or coming. I sound like my father right now. That's two of his most famous lines. But regardless, like what are you doing, Titans? Make up your mind. Are you gonna tank for the number 1 pick next year? If that's the case, then why'd you take Will Levis? Are you gonna compete? Probably not. Mostly because you have no weapons whatsoever. Besides Derrick Henry. And then you take Tajay Spears. You take a backup running back. Like, they have all these needs, and 2 out of their top 3 picks were backups to their best players. Make up your mind. What are you doing? Now, if Will Levis works out, of course, it's going to sound like a stupid take. But for now, what the hell? What are you doing?
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree.
That's all I got.
My last one.
Michael, finish us off.
My final loser, the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlantic, because I want to throw them into the Atlantic Ocean.
By the way, Atlantic, listen to this, since you said Atlantic. For those of you out there, salmon lovers, you ever see anyone offering you Atlantic salmon and you think it's because it's from the Atlantic Ocean? It's not. Atlantic salmon is farm raised. And they created a breed of salmon called Atlantic to trick you. And they add orange color in there because it's gray. Disgusting.
Wild caught salmon, folks.
Wild caught only. And if you like sockeye, I don't know if we can be friends.
Sockeye is just not as good.
It's overrated. There's no fat.
Not as tasty. Yeah.
There's no fat.
You need
the fat. Anyway, Michael, go ahead.
With that being said, the Atlanta Falcons, I don't care about any of their other picks besides Bijan Robinson at number 8 overall. Look, at least the Lions showed signs last season of being a very good team. But now we got Bijan Robinson going 8th overall to the Atlanta Falcons, a team that had Tyler Algier run for over 4.5 yards per carry last season, absolutely crush it down the stretch last season. Cordell Patterson has been on the team catching passes and running and such too in that backfield. And they decide that what they need with Desmond Ridder at the QB position, a 3rd-round rookie from last season who didn't do much to show that he should remain the starter this season, they decide to go with a running back. Like, this is another team like the Houston Texans that are they're not in shape to compete this season, and to use a 1st-round pick a top 10 overall pick, like at least trade back. Trade back. Get more draft capital and make better picks later on. But instead they took Bijan Robinson because apparently Bijan Robinson is going to fill a need that they didn't necessarily need with the way Tyler Algier was running at the end of last season. Will he make their offense better? Yeah, because he's Bijan Robinson. But it doesn't mean he's going to make that team good.
Right now, Arthur Smith is like in a chair, just looking at this roster going, "Mwahahaha." They said I couldn't run 65% of the time. Mwahahaha. I'll show them. That's what he's. That I bet you they lead the league in rushing because
that would if Desmond Ritter on it. That would be a good bet.
Desmond Ritter's a rusher too.
Yeah,
and they were only a couple percentage points away from leading the league in rush percentage this year. And the Bears were the only ones that were the other ones. And
the Bears
were historically like terrible pass defense. I mean, pass offense. I will say this. I like what the Falcons did in the offseason this year. I like their additions. I like Jesse Bates. I like Jonnu Smith. I like that they showed up the linebacker position.
Jonnu Smith, Mr. Backup tight end. Who gives a shit about Jonnu Smith?
Because it helps the run game. He's a great run blocker. It's not all about fantasy football. I thought Mac Hollins showed some goodness last year. He'll be nice to have opposite of.
Goodness gracious, Tim.
Look, I'm not saying they're amazing. I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but they made some under the radar pretty good moves. And I think their best move was they re-signed their entire offensive line that was top 5 in PFF last year. So, I mean, I'm not betting on it, but if they get Ryan Tannehill or if Desmond Ritter's the real deal, which for what it's worth, I like Desmond Ritter as the best quarterback last year. And so did Matt. Then maybe you got something cooking with a guy in the backfield that's a Saquon Barkley level producer. I don't think that it's the worst move in the world. I see where you're coming from. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know. I think that there's some potential for the Falcons to compete in that division this year, especially because that entire division's in flux. Like, you don't know, I know Derek Carr's with the Saints now, but the Saints are a team that seems like they're on a descension. Carolina is going to have a very, very young quarterback, and you don't even know who the quarterback is with. It's either Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. Like, I'm not scared of that. So they're going to have an opportunity to compete in this division, and I think they're taking that opportunity.
Dude, when was the last time? I wish I looked this up before the draft, but I'm now before the podcast, but I'm now just thinking about it. Like, when was the last time a top 10 selected running back entered a team and the team drastically changed the next season? And don't say Zeke, because they also got Dak Prescott in round 4, who's a franchise quarterback.
I mean, they had Tony Romo though. It's not like they were struggling at quarterback.
But I'm saying they also drafted a franchise quarterback in round 4 in the same draft.
I mean, the Chargers got a lot better. I don't know. The
Chargers drafting who?
Melvin Gordon. Not in his rookie season, but
his
they
rookie
got a lot
season
better.
He scored 0 touchdowns. They got a lot better, not because of Melvin Gordon.
Let me pull up this list to remind myself.
Yeah, top 10.
Najee Harris.
Yeah,
really changed that. Leonard Fournette made that team go.
No,
Todd Gurley made a big difference for the Rams.
That was because Sean McVay got there.
No.
No, wait.
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley year 1 was whatever. The Rams
RB9
stuffed,
overall.
and then they got. I'm talking about the NFL, bro. I'm talking about actual NFL impact. Todd Gurley's rookie season, the Rams sucked, and then they brought in Sean McVay, and they turned it around. Leonard Fournette, the Jaguars still sucked.
No, they didn't. They got a lot better. No, they didn't. They got a lot better.
All right, now I got to look up the Jaguars record. What are you doing to me right now?
2017 Jaguars.
He wasn't drafted in 2017, was he?
Yes.
He's old.
First in the AFC South.
What were they in 2016?
Bitch.
What were they in 2016?
Let's find out. 3-13. Bitch.
All right, but it doesn't matter. It wasn't because of Leonard Fournette.
They went from 25th in points for to 5th.
It was because of Blake Bortles. That was the huge Blake Bortles season.
It was because of Blake. No, Blake Bortles' huge season came in garbage time.
Oh man, hold on.
Yes.
2017 Jaguars
Blake
roster.
Bortles in
Hold your
2017 had
horses.
21 touchdowns and 13 interceptions.
Nathaniel Hackett, let's go.
On the other hand, Leonard Fournette had 9 touchdowns, 10 1,040 hold on, 1,342 yards from scrimmage and 10 touchdowns. And Chris Ivory as well did some work. Blake Bortles 322 rushing yards that year.
Yeah,
Let's get
Blake
it.
Bortles had a couple good seasons. All
TJ
right,
Yeldon.
maybe. I mean, but still, yeah. Either way,
Yeah, but still, either way, suck it, Michael.
Well, oh, you found one person. But let's go back to 2017 and look at the Jaguars. It was not because of Leonard Fournette. Shut up. And you're not right. You found one instance out of hundreds where you're wrong. All right, I'm about to hang up on you.
I put out the line. You
You
bit
lost.
it, and I reeled it in.
You're the dude.
Reeled it in.
You know who you are, Tim? You're the guy
the guy who gets things right,
who tells people the New York City transit system is full with thieves and people who are ready to kill you because they got on the train once and saw one person steal something.
What the fuck are you talking about, bro?
You know, the people who fucking make these anecdotal proclamations. That's you right now with the running back because you found one Leonard Fournette that might fit.
There's no anecdotals
compared to a
remaining.
bunch that aren't.
No, because Ezekiel Elliott also fits that
No, he
mold.
doesn't. Dak Prescott does.
No, that's incorrect. I bet you the Giants got a lot better in 2018. I don't think they did. Now that I think about it, but I'm gonna find out. All right, 2018 Giants. Let's see how they compare to. All right, they were 5-11, so that's not off to a hot start there for and previous. They were 3-13, 2 games better, and their offense went from 31st to 16th. That's progress. And then the next year, the next few years, they lost a lot of games too.
That's what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, but the Giants are the Giants.
A team like the Falcons shouldn't be drafting Bijan Robinson. Is all I'm saying.
I have my last guy. My last guy is Lamar Jackson. We're coming up on an hour, so I won't make this too long. Yes, as a big winner. Look, it's kind of simple. He got his new contract. He got his new offensive coordinator, and he got his new weapons. His new contract makes him the highest paid quarterback in football. His new offensive coordinator, Tom Monken, is a guy who spreads the ball out. He's going to be – last time you saw him in the NFL, it was with the Buccaneers when Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick were launching that thing all over the field. And then new weapons. OBJ, obviously. Zay Flowers, which might be one of the best picks. And one of the guests that Matt has on and in his show is absolutely in love with Zay Flowers. Absolutely in love. Oh, I also forgot he was with the Browns, but he was like co-offensive coordinator with the Browns. By the way, offensive coordinator for Georgia the last 3 years.
Georgia.
So obviously doing the right things in college football. Also the wide receiver coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
The Jaguars.
Speaking of the Jaguars. But yeah, I mean, you add OBJ, you add Zay Flowers. Are these guys going to light the world on fire? We'll see. But there's a chance. Better than the guys that he had. More weapons to surround Lamar. A happy Lamar. And I think it's
paid Lamar.
A paid Lamar. I think it's a win all around for everyone, especially for Lamar Jackson and his fantasy health.
That's all, folks.
That's it. Mike, where can they find you?
At BrotoFF Mike.
You can find me at BrotoFF Tim, BrotoFF Jason, BrotoFF Casanova, at Psych Ward FF, at Broto Fantasy, at FF by Broto. That's all Twitter. And Instagram, at Broto Fantasy. TikTok, at Broto Fantasy. What else? YouTube. If you're watching us right now, thank you. We appreciate it. We're trying to grow the YouTube. I wish we would have paid a little more attention to the YouTube. To be honest, but we're trying to grow our audience there. So if you're listening and you want to check us out, you want to see our faces, you want to see the studio that we have, the patrons,
the Broto hoodie I'm wearing.
That's right. The patrons got us a Ryan Tannehill signed jersey, the true throw value king from his days at Texas A&M. So always love the patrons for that. And we just come and check us out. That's really it. Michael. linguine with clam sauce, or one high quality, like high quality pasticcio. Linguine and clam sauce or high quality pasticcio. For those who don't know what pasticcio is, go Google that right now. How do you spell pasticcio?
It's spelled pasticcio. Pastitio.
How do you just know pasticcio off the top of your freaking head, you weirdo? So, Michael, which one did you pick? What the hell? You're gonna leave the people hanging? They're never gonna know now.
I'm gonna go with
They're
the
never gonna know.